What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. It is Christmas time and I'm feeling very festive. Sorry for the delay in the videos. Things get busy, holidays are here. But for this video, I took the extra time because I want to make sure that the facts I give you on this unit right here are going to help you out. So let's get started. All right, so the internet has been going crazy right now with diesel heaters versus buddy heaters. It's everywhere. A lot of people are running out and buying them, and they're just telling you this is the best thing ever, you need to go get one. It's not what we're going to do here. I wanted to get this. I wanted to test it out. I wanted to see what it took to run off of my Jackery 500 because a lot of people out there said that it won't do it. So the details on it. This is what I've always been using, my buddy heater, and I do like it. The only problem with it is open flame, small tent, probably not a good idea. The other thing I don't like about it is when I'm up there and I run it, I'm not a fan of the smell of the burnt propane. It's just this warm, nasty feeling up in there. I don't run this all the time when I'm sleeping. What I'll do is in the wintertime, I'll fire this thing up. I'll run it for about 10 or 15 minutes on high, cook the tent out, shut it off, let it cool down, slide it in the corner, and then I'll go to sleep. And then at some point during the night, usually around 3 a.m., I wake up, I'm a little cold, so I gotta fire this thing back up. Problem I've had with this is, this might just be on this unit, I don't know if yours is any different, but when it sits a long time and it's really cold, I can't get this thing to fire back up. I don't know if it's something in this, or if it's something in the 1 pound bottles that everything kind of freezes up. I don't know. So this year I decided to go a little bit bigger, step up my game, and I went with the VEVOR. This is a 5 kW. So for now, we're gonna take this guy and we're gonna retire him because I got a lot of info on this thing. I'm kind of back and forth on it, but I do like this better than I like this. Let's get into the details. All right, so right out of the gate, I can tell you one thing, actually a couple things that I do not like about this unit. As you can see, it's sitting up pretty high. There's a reason for that. These guys right down here, that's the intake and the exhaust pipe for the actual combustion unit itself. Why are they on the bottom of this unit? I have no idea. Should they have mounted them on the side? Absolutely, because I can tell you this, during setup, having those hanging out like that, this is a nightmare to do. Most people put it on blocks. I haven't. I mean, I've got it sitting on blocks right now, and I will have to build something for this thing to continue to work. So once you fill this thing full of diesel, now I did buy this, a little 1.5 gallon container I'm going to use to carry my diesel fuel. This thing is nice. The only problem with it is the fill neck on here is very rigid. It doesn't have any flex to it. So filling this thing up, because it's so small, you do spill a little. So if you're going to do something like this, be careful. But back to this thing. Once you fill this container up, it holds about 1.5 gallons. It literally took everything in here and it filled it up just about to the brim. Once you fill this, then you have to put the hoses on. Now, the first time I did this, that's when I realized, well, wait, well, I guess I'll just have to fill it after I connect everything. But the amount of fuel this thing used in 1 night or 2 nights, it's not enough to really make a difference. So it's always going to have a lot of fuel in it unless you pour it out. So to connect these, we tried everything. We tried picking it up, sticking it on. We tried leaning it over, but once you lean it over, the cap starts to leak, and then you start getting fuel everywhere, and it just turns into a mess. The reason I went with this one is because it's already in a box. I don't have to build a box for it. And I see a lot of people out there, they'll go out and they'll get like a Pelican case, go to Hobo Freight and they'll get something and they'll build a case. But I figured, why not? It's all one unit. It's one less thing I have to worry about. Now, will that change my mind on buying another one? Probably not. I don't know. I do like this thing a little bit though. So as far as like storing it in your car or your vehicle while you're going place to place, you can take the hoses off, the intake and the exhaust hoses, but then you have to put them back on and it turns into a nightmare again. Can I route them differently? There's a hole back here on the back side that you can run a pipe out of, and that's fine, but they didn't do it in the front. So either way, if you want to leave the hoses on, you're gonna have to deal with these things hanging out like this. It's just kind of a pain in the ass. Now in the meantime, I did go online. I found a 90-degree elbow that I'm going to put on the exhaust side so I can at least take the exhaust pipe off, and then hopefully I can just connect that piece onto the 90 and just leave the 90 on there. The air intake one's not terrible. It's really flexible, so I can route that one out the other side, just kind of curl it up, and transporting it won't be as bad. Now it did come with another intake hose. That is the discharge for the air that you would run out the front. That's garbage. Didn't even want to try to use that. So another thing you're going to have to purchase is some kind of a discharge system. Now I did purchase this. This is a 3-inch like dryer vent hose because I figured, well, this is a 3-inch, perfect, right? Nice and small, everything goes together. But then I started reading online. Everybody's got an opinion on it, and a lot of people that did one, they said that with the 3-inch hose on here, it actually blows out in such a high volume that it will kind of like, it'll cause a back pressure in the hose, and then it could overheat the unit and then cause it to turn off. So we went with this. This is a 4-inch to 3-inch reducer and a 4-inch flexible hose. Now I have seen people use the rigid hoses. I don't recommend it. Go with the flex hose. It's a lot easier to set up. You can get your bins wherever you want them because it just flops around, and then you can trim this down to fit. Once I got this connected, basically that'll slide onto there, and then you can use the hose clamps that come with it. It comes with a couple of those. You can clamp that onto there, and then once you get this slid onto here, you can either use like a foil tape. This clamp is not big enough, so you will either have to go out and get a bigger hose clamp to clamp it on, or just use like an HVAC approved foil tape and tape it onto here. Then once you get this up to your tent, you just trim it down to size and you're good to go. You can pack this thing up really nice. So at some point you are going to have to build some kind of a base for this thing if you are planning on overlanding it. I just tossed it on the floorboard, drove it out there, and then I did take some bricks with me, put the bricks down on my table and set it up. You don't want to run this thing inside your tent, of course. So wherever you set it up, it will have to be elevated for the 2 pipes over here to work. And yeah, that's kind of a downer, but I guess it is what it is because I didn't have to build the case for it, and we're just going to have to deal with it. The other thing, the huge thing right out of the gate when you get this thing and open the box, it doesn't come with any kind of a plug to make it work. Apparently they recommend that you hardwire these things into your system. But obviously that's not going to work for me, or probably you, because you don't want this thing in your vehicle all year long. You only want it in the winter months. So what I had to do was I jumped on Amazon. I did find it's just basically cigarette port adapter. Now make sure when you do get it, you get one that's got a 20 amp fuse on it, because this thing does come preset with a 20 amp fuse. It's just 2 wires hanging out the end. So make sure when you do get this, you get one that's rated at 20 amps, splice it in, wire it up. I left mine really long. This way I can either have it on my spare tire carrier, or I can have it underneath my tent, just on a table. When I went out and tested this thing, it was raining off and on, and I didn't want this getting wet and frying the computer out of it. So I just put it on my table, underneath my awning. I had plenty of cable to reach around and plug it in, and that worked fine. But it doesn't say anywhere, as far as I know, maybe they changed it, but it doesn't say anywhere online when you purchase this that you need to buy a plug for it. So if you are planning on buying this unit, make sure you also get a plug for it. 20 amp rated fuse. The other downside on the wiring, on the back side, they didn't put a grommet on where the wire goes through the metal case. So over time, that's probably going to wind up chafing the wire, cutting into it. Then you're going to have problems. So before you wire this on, make sure you slide just a small rubber grommet up on there to seal that up so you don't wind up cutting the cable. So those are really my gripes about it. Power cable and the position of the intake and exhaust hoses for the combustion unit. Another thing it said in the instructions is for the exhaust, it either needs to be straight out or down. I don't know why, but just make sure if you're doing it, you do it that way. I've heard a lot of different weird things going on with these things. It's just, whatever happens, happens. I mean, you're just gonna have to kind of play with it, adjust it. Make sure you don't put the exhaust port right by the backside where it's pulling in air. I mean, it's basic stuff. Obviously, if it's raining, protect it, because I'm sure if water gets up in here, it's gonna screw it up, probably gonna turn it off, and then you're gonna wind up getting froze out of your tent at night. Some people were saying too that when it gets really, really cold outside, now when I tested this, we were in the mid 30s, upper 30s, into the low 40s, so I can't say how my unit is gonna react when it's 10 degrees outside. But some people have said that when it gets super cold, the actual display unit will freeze up and turn off the unit. The way I'm probably going to try to fix that is once this is on, I might take the exhaust hose, wrap it around just so that it touches the front of this to keep this warm, because This is not an insulated model. You can get insulated hoses, but with this one, there is a lot of heat that kind of just radiates through the side. So I'm hoping by running this up and around and across this, it'll keep the main computer part warm, which will eliminate any kind of, cold temperatures affecting it and turning it off in the middle of the night. So let's go ahead and we're going to open up the case. I'll show you what the guts of this thing look like, and we'll talk about that. All right, so now that we got it opened up, you can see this is one night worth of fuel consumption. So like I said, this holds 1.5 gallons, roughly 1.5 gallons. And when I filled it, it was all the way up here to the top. So one night got me down to there. So that's not bad. This thing can probably go, I don't know, 3 or 4 nights. And that is, I ran this thing for about 8, 9, 10 hours, somewhere in there. I'd say 9 comfortably. And that's all the fuel it used. So that to me goes to show that you can probably fill this thing up if you're going on like a 3-day camp and be okay. But I will always carry my little extra jug just in case. One more thing that I noticed on a lot of people talk about on forum groups and other YouTube pages is they'll say at some point in the middle of the night, this thing just shut off and they can't figure out why. Computer works, but it's not getting fuel or whatever. This is diesel fuel. Diesel fuel in extreme cold temperatures will gel up. So I would recommend, and I'm going to do it in mine, you can get any kind of fuel treatment system that you want. I prefer a brand called Power Service. I'm not sponsored by them, not affiliated by them, but it's something I've always run when I have my other diesel truck, and I really like it. So you can get that at any of your parts stores or something like that. Just run down. It's a small bottle. So you cannot dump the whole bottle in here because most of the time those bottles will treat 200 to 500 gallons of diesel fuel. So if you know you're going to go out and it's going to be a cold weather camp, this thing's going to be sitting outside and it's not like it's circulating fuel and keeping things moving or it's warm as much. I mean, it probably gets a little warm from the burner down below, but still, I would put just this couple, maybe a capful of that treatment into this to help it from gelling up, because that's going to cause this thing to shut down. I don't know if that's going to be the end-all be-all fix on it, but I'm going to go ahead and try it because, like I said, a lot of people are saying that when it gets really, really cold outside and after about 5 hours of running, it just turns off and they can't figure out what's going on. It's probably because of gelled fuel. So if you can put some kind of an anti-gel in there, not a whole lot, this is only 1.5 gallons. Hopefully they'll stop your fuel from gelling up, keep you warm all night. So another question I got asked a lot, and most people were saying that it wouldn't happen. On the online forums and groups and all that, people were saying that a Jackery 500 is probably not enough to run this thing. Well, I can tell you, yes it is, and it worked fine. It worked all night. And I took notes of what I found, what the consumption rate on this is. So really quick, we'll just run through it. The biggest draw of power on these is on startup and on shutdown. When you start it up, the maximum wattage I saw pull was anywhere between 110 and 120 watts. And it takes 4 minutes from when you turn this thing on to when it's actually producing heat. So when you turn it on, the blower turns on, everything kind of starts to cycle, then the pump clicks on, and then it'll get going. And the Jackery can handle it. On startup, 113 watts is typically what I found. It does jump around. But it's not going to put it over this. Now, normally, from my other videos, this thing also runs my refrigerator and charges my GoPros and my cell phone. So when I went to bed, the Jackery was at 93%. When I got up, got everything going, turned off the heater, once this thing was shut down and finished, the power consumption on that was down to 60%. Now, you also know from my previous videos, I charge my Jackery off of solar when I'm camping, and then if I'm driving somewhere, I can convert it over and switch it so it charges off the Jeep while it's running. The drawback that I had to it was this unit here runs 12 volt. I've only got one socket on here that I can run 12 volt off of with this style plug. So for my fridge, I had to unplug my fridge and then switch it over so that it ran off the 120. So all night, the 120 was on, the 12 volt was on, and my 3 USBs on my Jackery 500 were on. Ran everything just fine. Went from 93% down to 60%. Like I said, the biggest draw on this for the power for this unit, my fridge runs usually between 45 and 55 watts while it's running, and then it cycles off and shuts down. But this thing on startup was 113 watts. Shut down, it was at 94 watts. So that's in the morning when I got up, turned it off. This pulled back up to 94 watts on its own. That's minus the fridge and everything. So if you did the fridge plus this, if they were both run at the same time, you're well up into the 130, 140, maybe 150 watt range. So the overnight temperatures where I was camping, I think it was down about 38 degrees that night. The winds were very light, nothing heavy, so I didn't have to deal with that extreme wind chill or anything. So I ran this thing on the absolute lowest setting. On low heat, once this thing's powered up, kicked on, running, the watts pulled down. So all night long, this thing only pulled 10 watts of power, which is awesome. Which really let me know that the Jackery can definitely handle when this thing's on and running, and run my fridge, because all night long the fridge would cycle on and off. So you're anywhere from 50 to 60 watts, and I think the fridge only cycles for about 2 minutes, and then it'll turn off because I don't have the temperature set down to a freezing point. I just run it as a refrigerator. So on low heat, that's setting number 1, 10 watts. On medium heat, there's 1 to 10 settings. So on number 5, on medium heat, while running, this thing only pulls, again, 10 watts. Now, let's say you're freezing to death, right? And you want the maximum heat that this thing put out. Well, that's going to change the wattage. So on high heat, setting number 10, which is boiling heat coming out of this thing, trust me, this thing pulls 40 watts while running. So if you need extreme heat, or if you're heating a large space, like a camper van or something like that, and you need to run this thing on high, you're going to need to make sure that whatever is running it is capable of handling that. Now, if I was just running this thing with the Jackery 500 and I didn't have the fridge and I had to run it on high, it wouldn't concern me much. I would just know that in the morning there's probably not going to be a lot of power left in the Jackery, and I will have to do some kind of charging on it. Whether it's plugging it in on the 12 volt system for the Jeep and driving it, or actually plugging it into a 120 volt source, because that'll charge a lot quicker. And it also depends on the weather. If it's nice and sunny, I can run solar. But the problem with the solar and running the 12 volt charging, it's not as fast as 120 volt charging. So 120 volt charging, I get 85 watts into this thing. On a nice sunny day on my solar, I can pull between 60 and 100, depending on how sunny it is, or if it's like in the middle of summer. So it's just one more thing you got to look out for. But I do know the Jackery 500 will run this thing. So as far as the settings go, this thing does have an automatic setting and it does have a manual. I ran it in manual because I just wanted it on all night. I didn't want it to shut off for any reason, like on a timer. I do know that you can program, I think, a timer on it. The instructions on this thing are very, very hard to read. I can tell you that you can run it on manual. I set it on low. I ran the hose up into my tent, and on low, this thing kept my tent at about 77 degrees. Now, halfway through the night, I had to open up one of the top flies to vent out some of the heat because it was getting so warm. So I can tell you, I run the Howling Moon Stargazer series tent. It is like a full-size mattress size tent. They do have like a full size, queen size, king size. So if you were to picture the size of the tent, picture a full-size bed. And it kept it at 77. I was very comfortable. I actually took my sleeping bag and a blanket just in case this thing didn't work and I needed to make sure I was going to live through the night. But I can tell you that I didn't even use the sleeping bag. I literally just laid on top of it because it was kind of nice to have the extra padding on top of the mattress that's in the tent. And all I used was a light, fuzzy blanket really the whole night. And like I said, halfway through the night, I wound up opening up one of the top flies to let some of the heat out. So if you have a full-size rooftop tent or even a queen size, I'm sure on maybe setting number 1, which is low, or if you have a bigger tent, setting number 3 maybe, will definitely keep you nice and warm. So to me, this thing is an absolute game changer. Now that I know that it works, like I said, I'm going to do the fuel treatment in here to keep it from gelling up, because I do plan on doing some pretty cold winter tent camping, and I'm really excited about it. Buddy here, he's out the door. So I do have a good tent just in case something does go wrong with this thing, and I do have a good sleeping bag, and I got a lot of extra blankets, which will come with me. But if this thing does what it did that night, and it continues to do that, I am set. This thing is going to work perfect. Another thing in the instructions it does say is you got to make sure that you start it up and don't flood the system and don't turn it off halfway through and don't do this and don't do that because everything has to work perfectly. Mine came with a remote. You can get this with like a Bluetooth function and use your phone. I just went for the one with the remote because I don't need to run the Bluetooth. I didn't want anything to do it. That's more electronics in this thing that I'm willing to commit to. I just want heat, fire, flame, and that kind of stuff. But I can tell you, the remote control for it is kind of dodgy. So I did go to turn the temperature down at one point when I was testing this, and actually just turned it off. I've pretty much done everything to this thing that it says you shouldn't do, and it still works fine. Now, it will be cool to have something like this. I am doing a future project. I haven't let the rabbit out of the hat yet on what I'm doing, but something like this will be incorporated into my new build, and I can't wait to figure it out. I will probably buy the one in the case again rather than just all the parts, and then configure things to where I want them and how I need them in that project. But if you're handy and you want to try doing something yourself, you can save a couple bucks and get the one that's not in the kit and just build it in a little travel case. But to me, having it all as one piece, it just takes a lot of the problems out, and it's just one less thing you have to worry about. So I mean, the question is, should you buy one? I mean, this thing here was like $128 with a 10% off on Amazon, and we've all blown $100 on like dumber stuff. So would I recommend it? Hell yeah. Especially if you do a lot of cold weather tent camping, or if you got like a van life tent, van life camper or something like that. I mean, why not? I mean, we've all spent $100 on way dumber stuff. So dropping a hat on this thing to have nice, comfortable heat, I'm down for it. So to prove that the Jackery will run this thing, I am going to fire this thing up, and we are going to show you what it does. So to get it turned on, all you got to do, hit the on. It does talk to you. It's kind of funny. So right now it's in manual mode. It's on number 10. So we'll bump that down to number 1. It's got a clock on it. It's got a bunch of features on it. I don't know how any of them work, so we're not going to worry about it. I can tell you during startup it's already blowing cold air, so the fan's running. The exhaust will start to smoke up a little bit, and then we'll start to get our heat. So right now it's pulling, it was sitting at 90 watts. Now it's going up to 92. It's bouncing around. My Jackery is not 100% charged because I have it out in the Jeep running the fridge all the time. So it's at 77%, but as you can see, things are starting to happen. There we go. We got heat. So roughly, yeah, about 4 minutes, like I said. I've run this thing numerous times, numerous days in the garage, and it averages about 4 minutes from when you turn it on to when you're good to go. So you can definitely hear the blower motor, and then if this thing's running outside, you'll hear the blower motor and you'll hear the clicking. It does have like a clicker style, pusher style pump in it. That's all it does all night long, it just clicks. So now that it's pretty much up and running, the wattage is starting to come down. I'm at 24 watts right now and dropping. So that's fully operating. Clicker pump slowed down, fans chilled out. We're sitting at 10 watts, and that's on the lowest setting. As far as discharge temperature, I don't have my thermometer handy. I'll go get one, hang on. Okay, so as far as the temperature, it's pegged my temperature gauge, and I'm just literally just holding it in front of it. So whatever that equates to is where we're at. So you do get a heck of a lot of heat out of this thing. That's pretty much it when it comes to the VEVOR diesel heater. Would I recommend it? Absolutely. This thing, like I said, is a game changer for winter camping. If it continues to do what it's doing, this thing's gonna be awesome. I can't wait to get out there. I wanna do some snow camping, go out and run some trails with that. That'll be fun. And just get out and have fun. Like I said, fuel consumption on it, it's not very much. You can see right here, that's the difference that it used. It literally filled a gallon and a half, took it right up to the edge of this. So that's one night, that's 9 hours of runtime. So as long as you keep her topped off, should be good. Like I said, I'm gonna put my hose on. I'm gonna try to run the hose up through here, across the front of this to keep this warm. Once it gets down to like the, you know, the freezing temperatures, the below 20s and all that kind of stuff. But we're running, again, 9 to 10 watts of power being pulled out of the Jackery. You can see it right there. The cord is going straight from this into the Jackery 500, which is running it just fine. Now, would a Jackery 250 run it? Maybe. I don't know. I don't have one. I run the 500 because that's what I use. Will the 1000, 2000, 3000 run it? Absolutely. It'll just have more battery when you wake up in the morning. But for me, going from 93% down to 60% in one night, I know the next day I can recover that power, whether it's solar or driving the Jeep somewhere. Or if you're in a campground and there's a 110 outlet, you know, if they have on-site power, you can plug in and recharge everything. But the Jeep is pretty much set up to be off-grid 100% of the time if need be. And I have no doubts that I can keep this thing running on a daily basis. So if you got people camping close to you, this sound might get annoying, but you know what, as long as you're sleeping comfortably and nice and warm in your tent, I'm assuming that's gonna be their problem. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So we'll go ahead and shut it down now, and I'll show you what that takes. They do recommend, you know, shutdown procedures, startup procedures, but like I said, I've accidentally pulled the power plug out before while it was doing stuff, and I haven't had any issue. But I have heard and read stories online where people have had problems with things restarting or what have you because they did something improper. So I will tell you, just if you can, be careful. I'm a clumsy person, so yanking cords out and stuff like that's kind of my thing. But if you can avoid it, make sure you do. You just want to treat this thing, just make sure that it's going to keep going so you can continue having a good time out in the woods. So we'll go ahead and shut her off. Like I said, it does talk to you. It's kind of funny because when it's done, it says like, have a good journey or something. I don't know, it's funny. But it is starting off. Wattage is starting to come back up. So what'll happen now is the flame inside is going out, but the fan will continue to run just on a really low setting to cool everything off. Yeah, we're back up in the 70 watts, 80 watts. It is kind of jumping around. But it is only for a couple minutes during startup and shutdown. So don't worry about this thing sucking out, you know, 100 watts all night long.
Thanks for using. I wish you a safe journey.
All right, well, I mean, that's going to be pretty much it for this video. If you're thinking about getting a VEVOR diesel heater, I mean, I highly recommend this model. It's about $128. Sometimes I do the thing where they have a little click for 10% off. So it's always a good thing. Now I can tell you, there's hundreds of these models out there, all different brands, but I'm pretty much sure it's all the same guts, just in a different case. So if you find one that's cheaper, you want to give it a shot, give it a shot. But as far as the VEVOR model goes, I like it. It's a good unit. Like I said, the only drawbacks, the big drawback is having to have it on blocks. So the exhaust and air intake underneath work, but I mean, it's a small price to pay, I guess, to do it. Like I said, I do have a 90-degree bend piece coming for the exhaust pipe. Stay tuned for that. I'll probably, once that comes in, I test that thing out and get it hooked up, I'll probably put a picture or something, either on my Facebook page, Next Week's Adventure, or I'll put it in the community section here on YouTube and just show you what came in the mail, how I got it mounted. So, oh, and definitely, you're going to want to pick up a power plug, unless you're planning on hardwiring it in. But, I mean, unless you're building like a camper van, or, you know, you got room to store this thing all year long. I don't know. I just don't see the point in having your vehicle all the time, especially like the Jeep. I don't have much room in there anyway. I don't know. I like it. It's got its drawbacks, but for the price, to have nice heat in that tent when I'm sleeping in the wintertime, I mean, it changes everything. So now instead of sitting at home, maybe I can go out and do some more camping. It's always a good thing, right? Jackery 500, ran it no problem. So everybody out there saying the Jackery 500 won't run it, I just did. I've done it quite a few times. So I don't know what you're talking about. I'm happy with it. I like it. You guys definitely, I mean, if you're looking to get one, this is a good model. So I'm not sponsored by them or anything like that, but if you're looking to spend, 100, 120 bucks, why not? We've blown on worse stuff. Ooh, side note, for those of you who are still here, the interior upgrade on the Jeep. So the steering wheel, awesome. Even though everybody on there says I'm an idiot for taking out the airbag, whatever. These things are death traps anyway. I know what I'm driving. But I got another one. Second upgrade coming along. I do have the stuff. It's right over here, and I'll show you here in a second. But I can't wait to get these in. Went on Marketplace, found a gentleman who was selling these, and scored them for a good deal. And let's go see what I got here. So I landed me some 2018 Jeep Wrangler seats. Got the Sahara print in them. Kind of cool. But I got the fronts. And I also have the rear right down here. Rear one, I don't know if I'm going to use it. That's going to be a lot of fab work to get it in, and I'm not really too concerned about it because when I go out, I usually take the back seat out. I take the bottom part out, which you can see it's stuck over there. I'll take that piece out, and then I'll fold the top down so it's just like a platform so all my crap fits in there. So as far as the back seat goes, I don't think I'm going to use it. I don't know. I might wind up selling that. But the front seats, these are going to be awesome. I can't wait to get these figured out and how I'm going to get them mounted. So just kind of re-sprucing up the interior of the Jeep. So as far as the seats go, I don't know when I'm going to get around to putting those in. With wintertime coming, I do want to do some more camping. Now that I have this, I want to make sure that this thing is awesome and gives me the full year-round experience. So as far as the seats go, I mean, to do the seats, I need to get it in the garage. To get in the garage, you got to take the tent off, which then eliminates me from doing any kind of tent camping, unless I sleep in the vehicle. I don't know, there's not much room in there anyway. But those seats will be in that Cherokee. Come hell or high water, I'm going to figure out how to do the mounts and get those in there. But as far as heaters go, buddy heater, she's done. Diesel heater, we're good. Unless this thing craps out on me, we're back to the buddy heater. But I don't know. The buddy heater was nice. Don't get me wrong. If you're looking to get something, buddy heater's great. Buddy heater is actually more expensive than this thing, I think, when I bought it. So yeah, you guys, as always, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. I'll see you in the next video.